You're listening to Bottomshelf Bitcoin. This is episode 14.
Relax. Enjoy your coffee. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Take a chill pill. Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Bottomshelf Bitcoin, the podcast that puts Bitcoin knowledge within everyone's reach. Today our guest goes by RockstarDev. He is one of the developers of BTC Pay, and we kind of met in the BTC Pay server Slack channel that we mentioned in last week's episode, and we are going to be talking about a number of things, but we kind of got started down a track talking about internet censorship and some various things. So I wanted to have him on the show and so we could kind of share that with you guys. So Rockstar, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and really glad that we met on that Slack, man. I mean, I'm hoping others will join us there too.
Before we get into that other stuff, kind of tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got into Bitcoin and everything like that.
I've been programming for like last 20 years. Most of my life, I've spent being fascinated by computers. And around time with Bitcoin, it was happening 2009, 2010. I got really excited about it because of my background. I'm not from the US originally. I only came here for work, on H-1B. And that fascination with, economies, money, how do you have value, like how do you transfer value, like it's something that's been with me, since I was a little kid. Because, growing up in Serbia back in the 80s and 90s, hyperinflation was killing us, in 90s. So when Bitcoin happened, and, it's a combination of all that, technology and money, I got really interested in it. So that's, when I started looking more into the technology and seeing, where can my coding skills apply, where I can help. And that's actually how I met Nicholas also, because what he has done with porting Bitcoin from C++ to C# is extremely impressive. When he got upset with BitPay, it was great being able to join him and work on BTC Pay server together.
Yeah, you guys are always working on that. I know I talked about that in the last episode with him, but it seems like it never stops. People are always developing that. But, back to you said you grew up in Serbia, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have, when talking about hyperinflation, man, in America, growing up here, I think the government screws around with the inflation and, they jack up the loans and stuff. But you have a much starker experience then.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. You can not like U.S. government one way or the other, but it's definitely like here in the U.S. it's awesome compared to lots of other countries. Especially what happened in Serbia in the 90s is really terrible, because you have this crazy situation where your government is in some manner actively working against you. I mean, you see it in Venezuela also recently, and it's just terrible situation to be in, because as soon as you have interests, muddled up where government or people in power are trying to do one thing, citizens try to do another, it's just very, very unfortunate situation to be in.
Definitely. So part of how we got onto this subject originally was when we were talking about a few weeks back when Coinbase told WikiLeaks they were going to stop accepting their payments. Or I guess it was the WikiLeaks shop. It wasn't technically WikiLeaks itself, but for whatever reason, WikiLeaks shop was using Coinbase for their payment processing, and Coinbase cut them off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly that unfortunate situation that, as the world grows in complexity, we'll get to that situation more and more, because Coinbase is really trying to get into, the financial markets in U.S. To be on the good side of, SEC and other government bodies, and in that situation you basically need to do what they want. So if government says shut off WikiLeaks, that's what you do. And I mean, I get it from the both sides. What is happening with WikiLeaks and what WikiLeaks is publishing is definitely not good for lots of people. So obviously those people use whatever influence they have to make them stop. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I get frustrated with Coinbase. I stopped using Coinbase a while back because I don't think they're on the side of the cypherpunks and the developers and the individuality of the users. But I get it. As a business, you have to follow the rules, but at the same time, they've kind of shown their cards repeatedly now that they're going to do whatever their big government and big business friends want, even if that is ultimately not what's best for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying about being in unfortunate situations where, in capitalism, you're always doing what's best for you, right? It's not like what's best for the world or, what is the right thing to do. So, unfortunately, I just think we'll keep seeing that more and more as time goes by, as all these internet companies grow in power. If they're put between the choice, them or the right thing to do, they'll always pick what's best for them. So,
well, speaking of big internet companies, then why don't you kind of share with our audience and you've got some history there with some of these big internet companies.
Well, yeah. I mean, I found it so funny when we started talking on BTC Pay Slack, like how many people had, terrible experiences with various internet companies. Is it Google or Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is? Like, so many people have been banned, and it's just that, mark that, you're banned, you're a bad person, you did something wrong. And then you say, okay, what did I do? And they're like, oh, So, and you're like, no, I don't know, please tell me. And then it's just this, never-ending cycle of, if you open another account, then you have double account, so they block you again. So, I mean, it's just unfortunate because majority of moderation that's happening now on all of those platforms is done by algorithms. So, if those algorithms block you, it's likely not only, you don't know what you've done, but even the company doesn't know, and they don't want to spend, is it $100, $1,000, or how much it is to figure out, why you're banned. So if that keeps going, it will be indeed grim future. Like, imagine that. Like, you get just banned by the service and nothing you can do. You can't use Google. Like, that would be an interesting one.
Yeah. And it, like you say, because they're done by an algorithm on the first side, then when you push back and you inquire, you have to make it painful enough for it to be worth their time to go and figure out what happened. Because I think what they're counting on, like you said, is that most people will just give up. Yeah,
and I mean, most people just do. I mean, what not many people are in position even to do anything. Like, you don't have that much time to like keep writing emails and asking this, asking that. I mean, luckily, Twitter-wise, like, I'm hoping to figure out what exactly went wrong, but I'll update you once that Twitter annual shareholders meeting happens on May 30th. Like, definitely attending that. But I mean, for me, it's also like I try to, flip everything or convert it into fun experience. So if I wasn't doing that, yeah, I definitely would be saying goodbye to my Twitter account by now.
Yeah, and just so for our audience's sake, you got, you had a following on Twitter, you had your account, and they just banned you, and you've tried to get in touch with them, but they haven't really explained to you what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like Twitter shareholder for a few years now, I believe, and when I started developing like this or BTC Pay server, I was like, okay, I'll finally open up a Twitter account, and then I can interact with Nicholas and everybody else from BTC Pay server community. So I finally opened the account. Then I needed to buy assign my phone number. That was fun to the account, and I jumped through all those hoops, and like 2-3 weeks I got banned, from Twitter, and I really have no idea why, because I was only posting like coding stuff, like I wasn't even arguing with anybody. So I mean, we'll see what happened, but it's definitely, it must be some terrible, algorithm, because I know lots of people that also, like, we all saw those, crypto scams lately,
right,
on Twitter, where it's like, Elon Musk, I'll send you 1,000, BTC, just, send first 1 BTC to this address. And there were actually people who were, like, reporting those scams, and then they got their accounts banned.
Really?
Yeah, I'll send you a link when we finish this, so maybe you can put it in comments. But there are people who are doing that, like they report the scam and then they get banned, and again they can't do anything. So it's probably some piece of terrible programming that it just hopefully it doesn't. That's why also as a Twitter shareholder I want to understand, because Twitter has huge problems with growth, increasing user count, and if this is happening a lot, then long term it can be a huge problem for Twitter.
When you go to that shareholder meeting, you'll have to let me know how that goes. I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'll see too. Also, I'll definitely update you. Send you highlights if it turns out to be fun. Hopefully, it won't be too formal or people are like, it needs to be fun.
Well, and this can be a big problem, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever. A lot of people, Instagram, any of these social medias, they've created this environment where people this can be their job, is basically entertaining in some form or another, or infotainment, whatever it be, information, and they make their living off that, and that's cool. But then if they get cut off and there's not really a good resolution process here, people get cut off from basically their fan base or their income. I don't know if you know who Owen Benjamin is. He's a comedian, but he had this happen to him. He was saying some things that were not taken well politically, let's say, and he got cut off. And I think even Patreon at one point cut him off.
Yeah, I need to look at the details, because I only looked Owen Benjamin a little bit after you mentioned him, so I don't know exactly why they were upset with him, but it is exactly that situation where those big companies use the power to make you basically comply with whatever they see as proper narrative, in a sense. So I'm not exactly sure what Owen was guilty of, like, was he saying politically incorrect stuff, or stuff deemed inappropriate. But I mean, definitely when I look at the history of what's happening last year or two, there is obvious discrimination where if if you're pushing narrative from one side of the spectrum, you're like politically incorrect. But if you're trying to push another narrative that, you know, is a similar in a meaning, but only, you know, certain parameters are flipped, then you're suddenly, you know, the worst person in the world, you know. And I mean, it's just unfortunate. I mean, I probably the best example for me is what happened with Peter Thiel. I mean, the guy is still trying to explain that he wasn't going against journalists, but rather against the guy who is, you know, everything but the journalist. But somehow, people are still upset at him for what he has done with that Hulk Hogan lawsuit.
Oh yeah, that's nuts. So it's funny because I don't know if you listened to Tom Woods. He had an episode. I'll put a link to that episode in the shows. It was kind of a bonus episode where he was just talking about email marketing, but he kind of mentioned this whole thing and talked about having your own email list so that if something like this happened, you know, you don't get cut off from your fan base or, you know, your customers or whatever. I thought that was interesting. I think that's something I might implement on the website, on my site, is just so that, like, if people listen to the podcast and at some point I become politically incorrect, you know, they can, I don't know. I don't consider myself that what's the word I'm looking for? That intense, but you know, it changes all the time on a whim of like what's acceptable. So I figured I'll put a little thing there if people want to put their email down. So then in the event that I ever get cut off, I can update people when new episodes come out or something.
Yeah, man. But I think, they improved the process. So now if they cut you off on their platform, they'll also start, you know, marking your emails as a spam, you know, or something like that. So it's like kiss of death. Yeah. I mean, if maybe the best way to approach this is, flip completely. Just, you know, keep doing, exclusively politically correct stuff, you know. And you're like, let's go. Whatever is what is it, like liberal? Is that the term? Like whatever is the liberal narrative, you keep up with that, you know. And I loved that meme in which it was like Titanic, right? Where you definitely need to link that meme where it's like Titanic and there is that guy from Titanic that is trying to get onto those boats. And the guy says to him, like women and children. Yeah, women first. And then he says, did you just assume my gender? So. Oh my gosh. I love that one. That's like, funny. I'm like always, I'm even doing it, in public now when it's like, did you just assume my gender? And funny, people at first, they get scared, you know, they don't know how to react. So it's just. But
that's just it. It's so frustrating because it's like a fear thing. Like we're afraid of offending people, which and maybe that's why part of why I like crypto Twitter is because I was like you. I didn't really. I had a Twitter account, but I didn't ever use it because for so many other aspects of Twitter, it's just vitriolic. And I think crypto Twitter has a certain amount of that. Like people are criticizing each other, but it's because we have this kind of common goal of like we want this thing to survive, and so. We can't talk. We go, well, this is a bad idea.
No, you know? I mean, I'm definitely like that's the huge issue. You need to be able, like, when you're talking about freedom of speech, like you need to be able to discuss, you know, ideas, even unpopular ones. I mean, I definitely agree that there needs to be certain amount of moderation. You know, like if something is truly crazy idea and, you know, 90% of us agree on that, then let's definitely put it into category of, you don't want to discuss this. But the problem is like in the last 10 plus year, everything is trying to move in that category of, you know, like people don't agree with it. but you don't really want to start discussing it because it will impact your livelihood. And I mean, sure, if you're a comedian or in public spotlight, controversy could be even like good for you. But if you're like a programmer like myself, like it's terrible, because you suddenly need to move from what is your job, programming, and become a public personality and argue with people on that you didn't mean to insult anybody. You just want that freedom of speech. So just hopefully it will become better. I mean, I don't agree with everything that, for example, like Jordan Peterson is saying, especially when it comes to religion and stuff like that. But I really like seeing what he is doing, on public stage regarding this topic, and basically encouraging people to talk more, to interact, and not, turn everything into, you don't talk about this subject.
Right. Well, going back to when you were saying, if there's something that we don't want to talk about, we put it off to the side. I think for a lot of these big internet companies who, I mean, like you say, I mean, at least if they're American companies, a lot of them are based out of Silicon Valley. It's a very progressive, liberal area. And you're starting to see kind of a pushback on that some. But instead of having, here's a small box of things that we have already said, like, hey, these are not good ideas, we're not going to rehash them, we're not going to keep talking about them. It's more like, here's a small box of ideas you're allowed to have, and if you vary outside of this box, that's not tolerable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And I just think it's really unfortunate, because you need to be able to discuss ideas, especially in order to prevent hijacking of certain concepts and ideas and values. And I mean, to me, it's just crazy that companies will now step into and then dictate, this is okay to discuss, this is not okay. Especially companies like, I don't know, Facebook, who, I mean, we just had that Zuckerberg's hearing and everything else. Like, I don't know why they think, like, companies like Facebook, like, what gives them, moral superiority, and why they think they're the good ones to decide, this is good, this is bad. But I just think, maybe.
Well, yeah, especially. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, maybe it doesn't start that way. Maybe it's just how the big bureaucracy gets represented, because Facebook doesn't full-time employ people that review their content. It's like basically contractors all over the world. So when bans actually do happen, and like, Facebook in Silicon Valley maybe even, doesn't know. And the great example is, when Donald got banned on Twitter, like, that guy was a support person. He was quitting his job at Twitter. So for, his last action in Twitter support, he banned Donald Trump from Twitter. So that
I saw that.
One. But I mean, you can't get away with that one, definitely.
No, that one's a special case where he wasn't gonna, that one wasn't gonna get away with. I wonder though, if it'd been some lesser person, if it would have gone unnoticed and unfixed for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's been happening quite a while. Like, I still don't know those two women, like, what is Silk and Diamond. Like,
I saw
love their energy. Like, but I don't know if they're still banned on Facebook. I know that even that was like in Senate hearings. That was a question, like, why did they get banned? So, quite interesting.
Well, speaking of freedom of speech, I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago. I mean, now we're moving in from just policing kind of what are okay subjects in a more free society, but Signal has been having issues with these big companies, specifically Google and Amazon, which they were using to be able to kind of bypass censorships in closed off countries.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I need to look into that. So basically now Google and Amazon are blocking them because they need to comply with local laws, or how does it go?
Yeah, so Signal, for those who don't know about Signal, Signal is an end-to-end encrypted texting program. So it's and it will allow you to send SMS with people who don't have Signal. It'll just be unencrypted. But if it's between two people that have Signal, then it's end-to-end encrypted, which means that nobody in the middle can see what's being sent. But what happens is certain governments might block the service itself, right? And so to bypass that, Signal was using domain fronting, where they appear, there was certain code within Google that allowed them to basically piggyback on like they were part of the Google domain. And so in order for, let's say, Iran to block Signal, they would have to block all of Google's services.
Yeah.
Well, but because Signal's code is open source, I guess somebody figured it out and I guess brought it to Google, and Google said, hey, we're not going to allow you to do this anymore. So then they moved to Amazon, and then after they moved to Amazon, somebody saw it and pointed it out, and Amazon said, hey, you can't do that. They sent them a cease and desist and changed their policy or whatever about domain fronting. And so it's just, it's frustrating to see, because you go, these are companies that have their entire wealth and their whole business model is built on the internet and freedom of speech to some extent, the ability to make a living by interstate and international commerce. And then when it comes down to it, they're choosing, well, I'd rather keep business with this country than protect freedom of speech for these people who don't have it. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like I think we'll just keep seeing more and more of that. I mean, it's really unfortunate. And I mean, going back to my growing up in Serbia in the 90s, it is definitely that crazy situation like that I experienced as a kid, where you just completely ridiculous laws will get passed. And then if you do, end up criticizing government in one way or the other, you then get prosecuted by those laws. So, it's like Iran is a good example. I mean, they're still theocracy, right? Like they have religious government, so lots of stuff you simply can't do there. And if you say this is crazy, then they say no, these are the laws, so you need to respect those laws. And it's really interesting to see how that will evolve long term, because I think for the big internet companies like Google and Amazon, it will be exactly that. It's like less and less profitable to be on the bad side of any government, and it's just, it doesn't matter. They won't, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, they'll just go, okay, what is most profitable thing for us? Let's do that.
Growing up in Serbia, did you experience any kind of after effects of sanctions or anything like that?
Well, I mean, sanctions were quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, looking back, I always, when I think about it, I always first feel very grateful to my parents, because growing up, I didn't see anything, weird and all that. So, looking back, I have no idea how I, as a parent, would deal with the similar situation. Like you're trying to raise your kids and you're earning like $20 or $30 per month, and the whole country's under sanctions, and government has one view, all the other countries around you have another view. War is raging. It's just a terrible situation. So I just hope that we as a humanity and a world can evolve and keep going in some direction where you get some, I would say, globally recognized rights, so to say, but in a manner that if you respect, physical integrity of other person, you try not to be confrontational, aggressive, and so on and so forth, that you should have basically some set of rights, and that you can be treated as a human being regardless of where you're born. It's interesting, whether we'll get to that point in the next, 50 or 100 or 150 years, considering everything that's going on, like looking at recent developments. To me, it seems we'll go in the opposite direction.
Sanctions, in the way it's presented, let's say for America, when American says, hey, we're going to put sanctions on this country. Yeah. They go, this country doesn't take care of its people. They're horrible to their people. So we're going to cut them off from our supply. But in reality, that doesn't actually help the people that you're quote unquote helping.
Yeah.
The dictator or the corrupt government or whoever you're saying that you're cutting off, they still have their resources.
Yeah. And then they use the situation to turn it into a narrative that's like, oh, it's evil America that wants to destroy you people. And then within the people, they're like, basically what happens, you have two groups. They're like people that stick with the government, and then people that try to overthrow the government. And it plays out like that.
Yeah. And I think that's what just frustrates me, is because it's like, we use the word sanctions because it's a little more palatable, but really that's kind of what we're hoping, is that we can make people so hungry that they'll overthrow their own government.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's actually happening. But I don't know if you can talk about that, man. In this show, you'll get banned.
Yeah, I'll get banned if that's my politically incorrect thing that I'll get banned for. Yeah, that's why I keep two Twitter accounts.
Yeah, you're thinking too much. Yeah, stick with the narrative. It's we're trying to make the world a better place. It's sanctions. They need democracy, and everything will be good. So, no, I mean, I'm really just hoping that eventually, like, all that will be unnecessary. But I don't know, man. Like, looking at the way world is moving, it's basically like everybody's upset with everybody, and somehow everybody thinks, if we're pretending to be strong and we, push the other guys, then those other guys will, retreat, and then, we'll make the world a better place. I don't know, man. I'm hoping that we can evolve to some, win-win for everybody eventually, but we'll see how it will go.
Yeah. Do you think... Because this is where I'm kind of hopeful, and to bring it back to Bitcoin, because this is supposed to be a show about Bitcoin, I guess. But I'm hopeful that Bitcoin can play a part in this of either we don't have to have people starving under sanctions, or we can those people can bypass their oppressive governments or whatever.
Yeah. I really see Bitcoin as a huge force in that manner, because long term it is about decentralization, so that you can get to the point where you simply can't have those people in power who actually don't think through what they're doing, but rather they just use any means they have at their disposal. So, for example, they cut off financial access for, a certain country or a certain group of people. And, definitely if you can establish economy that's disconnected from political system, it can be a great thing. The only question is, whether you will be allowed to do such thing, That's why also I think why Bitcoin has been moving more and more towards store of value. Because when it's store of value, it's not so, it's not so obvious that it can be used in that manner. While, if you're having electronic cash, then governments will much quickly, jump on that. So we'll see. I mean, I've been really encouraged by some of the reactions by some people in the governments that are, trying to explain to others, like, don't stop innovation, don't fight against it, because if certain country fights against, innovation in this space, then luckily, because you have competition on the world stage, then another country will overtake and keep pushing. Like, for example, for Bitcoin, it's obvious that Japan is now in the lead. I mean, it's now, 9 months since Japan overtook US in Bitcoin transactions. So, I mean, competition is good, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you made about store of value is almost like a place to hide. Well, or not hide, but that it's not so obvious. It's not threatening, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, that's when I talk with people about Bitcoin and I try to explain why it is so valuable and why it's, genuine innovation. Like, to me, it's striking how people still can't understand that Bitcoin is basically, investment class, asset class. The same way, like, people are saying, oh, this painting has been bought and it's been bought for $500 million. And they simply can't understand how that is happening. And it's happening simply because you have this inflationary economy in which long term you can expect that, in next 100 years, $1 will lose like 99% of the value. Because, that's the way modern economy has been set up. So in that situation, just hedging against inflation has huge value. Or, having investment class that is disconnected from other asset classes, like, bonds and stocks. So just there is a huge value there, simply for people that, want something that will allow them to, you want to hedge against world conflict, for example. Probably, I would say, thinking about it, probably, outside of investing in those that produce weapons, like, you likely want to invest in Bitcoin. So it's interesting. Like, I definitely need to invest more time into, polishing my skills to explain that in better manner, so that I can explain it to more people in that sense.
Yeah. So then, do you think, I guess kind of end of 2017? Well, it's been a few years, but really, we kind of addressed it at the end of 2017. The scaling with SegWit and with Lightning and stuff, and obviously Lightning is not fully developed, but the network just keeps growing and the wallets are becoming more usable and things like that. But I think this next push in the technology is going to be about privacy and anonymity. Do you think once those things start really coming out that we'll see a move back to a means of exchange? Or I don't think it'll stop being a store of value, but do you think that people will start exchanging it more again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of pessimistic on that. I actually, like, the reason why I got into Bitcoin is exactly because I was so excited about, medium of exchange. Like, I love payments. I mean, and it is quite obvious considering I'm working on a BTC Pay server. So I would love to see like I wished for Bitcoin to scale. I wished, that block size was increased, and that, so that the community could have stayed together. I still wish for that, but it happened. Yeah, what happened, and this move toward store of value and censorship resistance is basically where I see things will keep going toward, and it is very likely that Bitcoin will be exactly that, and that for payments or electronic cash we will see rise of something new. And it has its pros, it has its cons, but on the pro side, this move definitely ensures that Bitcoin shouldn't be it won't be stepped on long term by regulators, and basically it will survive. So that's the good thing. Bad thing is, it would be awesome if Bitcoin were turned into global means of payment, but at this point I think long term that's very unlikely.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to plug? Any websites or anything like that you want to let our audience know to find you, or anything before we have to say goodbye?
Yeah, guys, join us on BTC Pay server Slack. It's freaking awesome. We would love to have you, and we can all discuss Bitcoin, BTC Pay server, future developments. You can yell at me, say we need this feature, then I can implement it. And if I have time, because BTC Pay server is something I'm mostly doing as a hobby with Nicholas. I have my own full-time stealth project that's in stealth mode, but once that's out of the stealth mode, maybe we can talk more.
Yeah. So Nicholas does are you doing C# as well, or your stuff more like the CSS and all that?
Yeah, I'm not as awesome as Nicholas. I do full stack. I do anything from databases to mobile apps or microservices. So I do C#, but I mostly help Nicholas with things that he doesn't have time to focus on. So CSS tends to be it's tedious sometimes, so I just being the great guy I am, I just jump in and try to help with whatever needs helping with. Actually the thing that I'm working on right now is that LND integration. So hopefully people that prefer LND for Lightning Network instead of C Lightning, they will like what I'm doing, but I'll let you know once that's ready, so you can maybe test it out if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. Always more options is always better. So, well, cool. Well, you guys, I'll put the link again in the show notes for that Slack channel, and y'all can come join us and talk. And definitely. And we won't ask you about your gender. So. We don't care. Don't tell us.
Did you just assume my gender? It won't be like.
I'll put that in the show notes too. We can find that meme. So, all right. Well, Rockstar, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, man.
Okay, everybody, that's going to do it for our episode today. Remember, if you want to support the show, you can do so by just sharing the episode on Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media you use. Don't forget, subscribe to the show, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever podcast app you use. If you want to support us financially, you can do so with Bitcoin through our Payoneer address, or I now have another page on the website for the BTC Pay server. You can check that out. You can also support us with fiat through our Patreon page, patreon.com/bottomshelf Bitcoin. And then always you can buy Tuttle Twins' book through my link, bottomshelfbitcoin.com/kidsbook. Again, those are great books for anyone who wants to learn about liberty and free market economics and things like that, whether you're an adult or a kid. It applies to everybody, so great stuff. All these links for today's episode will be at bottomshelfbitcoin.com/14. 14, that's the number, don't spell it out. That would be ridiculous. There'd be no point in shortening it. bottomshelfbitcoin.com/14 for the episode show notes. And you can follow me on Twitter at bottomshelfbtc, where I typically throughout the week will post some of the show note links, and you can engage with me there and send me recommendations for people I should have on the show or things I should share with everybody else. But come back next week. We are going to have Lynn Ulbricht on. That is the mother of Ross Ulbricht. And if you don't know who that is, he was the creator of the Silk Road, one of the first Bitcoin markets. So I say was, he is, but he is serving a really unjust sentence in jail. And she's going to be on. We're going to be talking to her about that. He's got an upcoming Supreme Court case and kind of the implications that has, not just for him, but for all of us. So you really don't want to miss that episode. It's going to be great. I'm really excited about that. So I will see you guys next week. From Bottom Shelf Bitcoin, I'm Josh Humphrey. Thanks for listening.